Hi, Steve from Steve M Outdoors here, with kind of a spur of the moment video meant for new shooters. So if you're an experienced shooter, you might want to just back out of this video. Don't worry about it. This was prompted by a couple of range trips where I saw relatively new shooters come out and they had their rifle and they just gotten a brand new scope. So they took their they mounted the scope to their SKS. It's always an SKS for some reason. And it was their goal to shoot at 100 yards. No problem. So, you know, they'd set up their paper and they would start blasting. And they didn't hit paper at all. You see them now, and if you didn't know they were sighting in a scope, you know at this moment. They start fiddling with their windage and their elevation, and they're just moving the darn thing all over the place trying to hit the paper. Experienced shooters will know what I'm about to say next. They were trying to zero in their scope at 100 yards, right off the bat. A lot of people, particularly new shooters, believe that scopes kind of come from the factory sort of zeroed in. That is, they're down the middle, all you got to do is just fiddle and diddle with them a little bit and you're going to start marking paper or hitting the X-ring. That's not the case. Of course, a lot of scopes are tested before they leave the factory, wherever it may be, and oftentimes you'll find that they're at the very end of either the elevation or the windage or both, basically because they're testing to see whether the scope actually tracks correctly. So, that's not the case, as I said. A lot of scopes could be anywhere. So here's a helpful little hint for new shooters out there trying to zero scope in. Start close. Start at 25 yards. You would be amazed to find out how far off your scope is at just 25 yards when you're aiming for the X, or you know, whatever it is that you're aiming at. Once you've zeroed in your scope at 25 yards, put a target up at 50. And you'll find that despite your careful adjustments, you're probably still off to whatever side that you were before. Probably not as much, obviously, at 25 as you are at 50, but you'll be off a little bit. Once you've zeroed in your scope at 50, then go to 100 yards. Again, you'll find that the scope is out again a little bit, or maybe a lot, who knows. Once again, take your shots, adjust your scope at 100 yards. And keep repeating until whatever distance that is that you were hoping to achieve, 100, 200, 500, 1,000, whatever the heck it may be. Now, is this the most efficient way of zeroing in a rifle? A lot of guys use bore scope. I'm not a big fan of them. I find that they don't actually work all that well. If you have a bolt action rifle, you can always remove the bolt, put it on a sled, aim the rifle through the barrel at the target, and then carefully adjust the scope so that it also meets the target, and you'll find you're generally in the neighborhood. But if you're firing a semi-automatic rifle, that bolt action trick isn't going to work for you. And again, I'm not a big fan of bore sighters. There are a lot of guys out there who brag that they can sight on a rifle in 3 bullets. Okay, great. For the most part, I think a lot of people can't do that. I know I certainly can't. Very rarely do I manage to achieve that. So, short but sweet. If you're trying to sight in your rifle, your brand new rifle and your brand new scope, start close. 25 yards, 50, 100, and progressively get out longer and longer. And you'll find that it'll be a lot less frustrating than not even marking paper. One guy that I saw, he kept doing that at 100 yards. And he didn't listen to me when I said, you know, come in a little bit closer. He thought he could save some time. And he kept shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting. Through my spotting scope, because his target was fairly close to mine, I could see what he was doing. He was actually creating furrows in the ground. His scope was so far down that it was just creating groove upon groove as he was working the windage from right to left. It was only after I loaned him my scope that he saw what he was doing that he raised the elevation and stopped fiddling around with everything so much and just started to, you know, hit paper. So, a little handy tip for you new shooters out there. Experienced shooters know this already, but I've seen it so many times that I realize this is one of those obvious videos and probably too obvious, but maybe it's so obvious that it actually needed a video. Anyway, happy shooting, safe shooting. Take care.